The bitter taste of my morning coffee intensified in a strange way just moments before my world collapsed forever. My name is Ernest Sanders. I'm 57 years old, and until 30 seconds ago, I believed my daughter Ellen was incapable of hurting us. Now, as the poison began to burn my throat, and I watched my wife Carol writhing beside me, I understood that I had raised a monster. Ellen had arrived early that Saturday morning, just as she had done occasionally since she moved out of the family home 2 years ago. "Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Mom," she had said with that smile I now recognized as pure acting. "I brought you special coffee from that French bakery you guys love so much." Carol and I had accepted the cups with gratitude. Ellen had always been attentive with these small gestures, or so we thought. We sat in the living room like every weekend morning, with Ellen chatting animatedly about her job at the real estate agency, her plans for the future, and how much she loved us. The first sip was normal, the second slightly bitter. On the third, I recognized the unmistakable metallic taste I had learned to identify during my years as a pharmaceutical chemist. Arsenic. My own daughter had served us arsenic in our coffee. My heart raced, but my mind remained cold. I looked at Carol over the rim of my cup, and in her eyes I saw the same horrified recognition. She had identified it too. 25 years of marriage had given us a silent communication that Ellen could never understand. Carol coughed lightly, a signal agreed upon between us decades ago for when we needed to speak in private. But this time the cough was also genuine. The poison was taking effect. "Do you guys feel okay?" Ellen asked with fake concern, leaning forward with an interest that now looked predatory. "You look a little pale." "We are perfectly fine," I lied, feeling the burning in my stomach intensify. Carol brought her hand to her chest, acting as if she were short of breath. Her 20 years as a nurse had taught her exactly how to simulate the symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Ellen watched us with an intensity that froze my blood. It was not the look of a daughter worried about her sick parents. It was the look of someone waiting for results, calculating times, measuring the effectiveness of her plan. "Maybe you should lie down," she suggested, but there was something in her tone that sounded more like an order than a suggestion. "I will stay here to take care of you." Carol began to convulse slightly, her years of medical experience making the performance completely convincing. I joined the performance, letting myself fall from the chair to the floor, twisting as if the pain were unbearable. Ellen approached quickly, but not to help us. She knelt beside us, checking our pulses with cold, calculating fingers. Her hands did not tremble. There were no tears in her eyes. There was only satisfaction. "Shh, it is going to pass," she murmured as if we were children having a nightmare. "Just relax. Everything will be okay soon." From my position on the floor, with my eyes squinted shut, pretending to be semi-conscious, I saw her stand up and head directly toward the desk in my study. She did not head toward the phone to call an ambulance. She did not scream for help. She headed toward our personal documents, as if she had been waiting for this moment for months. Carol lay beside me, her breathing controlled, to appear labored but remaining conscious. In her eyes, I saw the same question that was torturing me. How had we reached this point? At what moment had our daughter, the girl we had raised with so much love, become someone capable of murdering us? Ellen returned with a folder full of documents. Our wills, the deeds to the house. The bank account records the life insurance policies. She had planned it all meticulously. She knew exactly where to find every paper she needed. She sat on the sofa, completely ignoring our dying bodies on the floor, and began to review the documents with the efficiency of someone who had been preparing for this moment. She took out her phone and started taking photographs of specific pages, focusing on signatures, account numbers, and beneficiaries. "Perfect," I heard her murmur as she photographed our will. "Everything is exactly as I thought." My stomach churned, and not just from the poison. Ellen had been planning our death for a long time. She had studied our legal documents. She had calculated how much she would inherit. She had prepared every detail of this moment. Carol moved slightly beside me, bringing her mouth close to my ear. Her voice was barely a whisper, so low that Ellen could not hear her from the sofa. "Ernest," she murmured, "there is something I never told you about Ellen. Something terrible." Her words chilled me more than the poison in my veins. What could be more terrible than discovering that our daughter had tried to kill us? "What?" I whispered back, keeping my eyes closed so Ellen would not realize we were conscious. "Ellen is not our daughter." Carol murmured every word like a dagger in my heart. "She never was." The world stopped. The pain of the poison in my stomach became insignificant compared to the shock of those 5 words. Ellen was not our daughter. But that meant that... "I will explain later," whispered Carol, seeing the confusion in my eyes. "But Ernest, if she is not our daughter, then all of this is much worse than we think." Ellen continued reviewing documents, completely oblivious to the whispered conversation that was changing my understanding of my entire life. For 25 years, I had believed I was the father of this woman. I had worked tirelessly to give her the best education, the best opportunities, all the love a father can give. And now I was discovering that not only had she tried to murder me, but she was not even who I thought she was. Dead mom. Ellen approached again, checking our pulses. Her performance as a worried daughter was perfect, but now that I knew the truth, I could see the falsehood in every gesture. "Their pulses are very weak. I think it is time to call the doctor." But she did not move toward the phone. Instead, she returned to the documents, continuing her methodical cataloging of our financial life. Carol squeezed my hand, slightly a signal that we must continue pretending until we completely understood the situation. We had to know what else Ellen was planning, who she really was, and why she had been living this lie for more than 2 decades. As I lay on the floor of my own living room, pretending to be dying from the poison my supposed daughter had put in my coffee, I realized that this was just the surface of a much deeper and more sinister deception. Ellen was not our daughter, but she had lived in our house. She had eaten at our table. She had received our love for years. Who was she really? What did she want from us? And what had happened to our real daughter? The poison in my system seemed less threatening than the questions that now tortured me, because if Ellen was not who she said she was, then Carol and I were not the only victims of this deception. We were just the latest ones. Ellen left the living room for a few minutes, heading toward the kitchen. I heard the sound of the water faucet running, probably washing the cups to eliminate evidence of the poison. She was meticulous, calculating, and completely cold in the execution of her homicidal plan. As soon as her footsteps moved away, Carol moved closer to me, her breathing still controlled to maintain the act, but her eyes burning with a desperate urgency. "Ernest listened to me very carefully," she whispered so low that I had to concentrate completely to hear her. "Ellen is not our daughter because our real daughter died when she was 3 years old." The impact of those words was like receiving another type of poison, one that attacked the heart directly. Our daughter had died. How was that possible? I remembered perfectly Ellen growing up, her first steps, her first words, every birthday, every Christmas. "What are you talking about?" I murmured, feeling my world crumble even further. The real Ellen died in the hospital during a routine surgery to remove her tonsils. She was 3.5 years old. You were at that pharmacist's conference in Chicago. Remember, I could not tell you over the phone. It was too devastating. The memories began to rearrange themselves in my mind, like pieces of a puzzle I never knew was broken. I remembered that conference. I remembered that Carol had sounded strange on the phone, but I had attributed her tone to worry about Ellen's minor surgery. When you returned 3 days later, Carol continued, I had suffered a complete nervous breakdown. I was sedated in the psychiatric facility, and this girl, this imposter, was already living in our house. How is that possible? Your sister Monica took charge of everything while I was hospitalized. She said she had found Ellen lost in the hospital, that apparently she had gotten confused after the surgery. All the doctors and nurses were so upset by the chaos of those days that no one questioned her story. Monica, my older sister, she had always been manipulative. She had always had her own agendas. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. When I got out of the psychiatric hospital 2 weeks later, Carol continued, you had already reconnected with Ellen. She knew things about our family, about our house, about routines, that only our real daughter would have known. I was so medicated, so confused, that I began to doubt my own memory. Ellen's footsteps returned from the kitchen. Carol immediately went back to her performance of being in agony, but not before whispering one last, devastating revelation. Ernest, I have spent 20 years investigating in secret. Ellen is not just an imposter. She is a serial killer who has been killing adoptive parents for inheritances for decades. The world became completely surreal. Not only had we lost our real daughter without knowing it, but we had been living with a killer who had perfected the art of infiltrating families to kill them and steal their fortunes. Ellen returned with a wet towel, kneeling beside us with a perfect performance of a distressed daughter. Dad, Mom, I'm going to call the ambulance now. Your pulses are getting weaker. But again, she did not move toward the phone. Instead, she continued reviewing documents, this time focusing on our life insurance policies. $2 million each, with Ellen as the sole beneficiary. Do not worry, she murmured as she photographed the documents. It is all going to end soon. You have been wonderful parents to me. You are going to be remembered with love. The coldness of her words made me understand that this was not her first time. Carol was right. Ellen had done this before, probably many times. She had perfected not only the method of murder, but also the emotional performance that accompanied it. From my position on the floor, I began to notice details I had never perceived before. Ellen had small scars on her hands that she had never explained. Her stories about her childhood had always been vague, with details that changed slightly every time she told them. Her knowledge about our family had been impressive, but now I understood that it had been studied, memorized, not lived. You know what is the strangest thing, Ellen said, speaking to us as if we were her confessors instead of her victims. After all these years, you guys have been my favorite family. Seriously. Other parents have been boring, demanding, suspicious. But you really loved me. Her words were a complete admission of guilt, but they also revealed something even more disturbing. Ellen had killed multiple families. She had perfected a system of fraudulent adoption followed by murder for inheritance. That is why I waited so long to do this, she continued as if she were having a casual conversation. With most families, I act within the first 2 years. With you, I waited almost 25. I really want it to work. Carol tensed her hand slightly in mine. We both understood the implication. Ellen had been planning to kill us for years, but she had waited because she genuinely enjoyed our family. We were her most successful experiment in living a normal life. But things have changed, whispered Ellen, her voice becoming colder. I have expenses now, commitments, and you're getting older. It is better to do this now while I can still make it look natural. She stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the street as if she were waiting for something or someone. My associate should be arriving soon, she said casually. He is going to help me with the medical aspects. He is very good at making poison deaths look like simultaneous heart attacks. A little unusual, but not impossible for a couple of your age. Associate. Ellen did not work alone. There was a network, an organization dedicated to this type of inheritance murder, and now she was waiting for someone who would ensure our deaths look natural. Carol squeezed my hand 3 times our agreed signal for, we need to act now. She was right. Once Ellen's associate arrived, our chances of survival would reduce dramatically. But we also needed answers. If Ellen had been doing this for decades, there were previous victims who had never received justice. Families who had died believing they loved their adopted daughter, without knowing she was their executioner. and we needed to know what had really happened to our original Ellen. Had she really died in that surgery, or was there something more sinister involved? The sound of a car arriving in the driveway made me tense up. Ellen's associate had arrived. Our time to maintain the act was running out rapidly. "Perfect," Ellen said, smiling for the first time with genuine joy. "Dr. Roberts is always punctual. He is going to check your bodies and confirm that your hearts simply could not handle the stress." A very peaceful end for a couple who loved each other so much, a doctor. Her associate was a corrupt physician who provided fake autopsies. This explained how Ellen had managed to escape criminal investigations for years. She had professional medical cover for her murders. Carol looked at me with desperation. We both understood that we had discovered something much bigger than we had imagined. Ellen was not just an individual killer. She was part of a sophisticated criminal network that specialized in inheritance murders with medical cover. And now we were next on their list. While Ellen opened the door to receive her accomplice, my mind involuntarily submerged into the memories of the last 25 years, now tainted with the horrible truth Carol had revealed. Every happy moment with Ellen had become a lie. Every hug an act. Every "I love you, Dad," a calculated manipulation. I remembered the day I supposedly returned from that conference in Chicago. Carol had been strangely quiet, sedated with medications that I had assumed were for the post-operative anxiety of Ellen's surgery. My sister Monica had been there controlling the situation with an efficiency that at that moment I had admired, but that now I understood as sinister. "Ellen is very confused from the anesthesia," Monica had told me. "The doctors say it is normal, but she is going to need a lot of patience to remember family routines." And effectively, Ellen had been confused. She did not remember where we kept certain toys. She seemed not to recognize some of her favorite songs. She had even slightly changed her way of speaking. I had attributed all of this to the side effects of the surgery and the anesthesia, but now I understood that it was not post-operative confusion. It was a completely different girl trying to memorize and imitate the life of our real Ellen. Footsteps in the hallway approached. Ellen returned accompanied by a man of about 60 years old, dressed professionally with a medical bag that probably contained the tools necessary to falsify our cause of death. "Dr. Roberts, thank you for coming so quickly," Ellen said with the tone of a distressed daughter. "I think it is too late, but I wanted to be sure." "Do not worry, Ellen," replied the doctor with a smooth voice that sounded vaguely familiar to me. "Let's check your parents and see what we can do." Dr. Roberts knelt beside us, checking our pulses with expert hands. But it was not a genuine medical check. It was an evaluation of how convincingly we were faking being dead. "Their pulses are very weak," he announced for Ellen's benefit. "I'm afraid they have suffered simultaneous heart attacks. It is rare, but it can happen in couples who have been married this long. The emotional stress of seeing your partner in crisis can trigger a similar reaction." It was a perfectly plausible explanation that any coroner would accept without questioning. Dr. Roberts was clearly an expert in creating credible causes of death for poisoning murders. "Is there anything you can do?" asked Ellen, maintaining her performance until the end. "I'm afraid not, my dear. We arrived too late. But I can assure you they did not suffer. Simultaneous heart attacks are generally quick and painless." Carol squeezed my hand slightly. We both understood that we needed to act soon. Once Dr. Roberts began to prepare the fake death certificates, it would be almost impossible to reverse the situation. But we also needed to hear more. If we were going to expose this criminal network, we needed evidence of their full operation. "How much time do you need to prepare everything?" asked Ellen. "Give me 20 minutes to make the necessary notes and prepare the certificates. Then you can call the funeral home. I recommend Henderson and Sons as always. They do not ask uncomfortable questions." As always, this confirmed they had done this multiple times before. There was an established routine, a network of accomplices that included funeral homes, that did not investigate too deeply into causes of death. Dr. Roberts, Ellen said while he prepared his briefcase, have you heard anything from Monica lately? Monica, my sister, was involved in this. Not only had she facilitated the substitution of Ellen 25 years ago, but apparently she was an active part of this criminal network. Monica is handling the Harrison case in Cleveland, replied the doctor casually. A situation very similar to this one. Older adoptive parents, substantial inheritance, sudden death from natural causes. The Harrisons. There were more victims right now. Ellen and her network were operating in multiple cities, simultaneously killing families for their inheritances with the cover of a corrupt doctor and complicit funeral homes. And the new candidate you found in Houston? Asked Ellen. Ah, yes, the Vance family. Perfect family. No biological children, big house, prosperous businesses. Monica is already working on the forged adoption documents. The new daughters should be installed with them within 2 weeks. It was an industrial operation. Ellen, Monica, Dr. Roberts, and probably others had created a system to identify vulnerable families. Without children infiltrate fake adoptive daughters, and after years of establishing trust and being included in wills, murder the adoptive parents for inheritances. How many families are we handling currently? Asked Ellen while she organized our documents. Including you, 7 active cases in different stages. 3 in the infiltration phase, 2 in the establishment phase, and 2 ready for completion. 7 families. At this moment, there were 7 families being manipulated by this network with loving parents who had no idea that their adoptive daughters were planning to murder them. Carol squeezed my hand harder. Her indignation was palpable. As a nurse, she had dedicated her life to saving lives, and now we were discovering a network that specialized in destroying families in the cruelest way possible. Ellen, Dr. Roberts said while filling out papers, I need you to remind me of the details of how you found them this morning. For the official report, of course. I arrived around 9 for our usual Sunday breakfast. I found them in the living room, Mom in her favorite chair, Dad on the sofa. At first I thought they were sleeping, but when they did not respond to my voice, I got closer and saw they were not breathing. It was a perfectly credible story that explained why Ellen had been in the house when she discovered our bodies. Every detail had been planned to withstand any police investigation, and no signs of struggle or anything unusual. Nothing. Everything was perfectly normal. They had been worried about their health lately, especially Dad. He has had some episodes of high blood pressure. I had never had problems with high blood pressure. Ellen was building a fake medical history to support the narrative of death by heart attack. Perfect. That completely explains the simultaneous heart attacks, the stress of age-health worries, and the shock of seeing his partner in crisis. Dr. Roberts finished filling out his forms and prepared to leave. Ellen, give it 2 hours before calling the police and the funeral home. You want to ensure it looks like you tried to revive them, but it was too late. Understood. Anything else you need to know, just remember to act devastated, but not hysterical. A lot of sadness, but keep your composure. It is what they would expect from an adult, mature daughter. Ellen had been trained not only in murder methods, but also in acting techniques for subsequent investigations. She was a true professional of deception and death. After Dr. Roberts left, Ellen sat on the sofa and looked at us with an expression I had not seen before. It was not the fake concern she had shown in front of the doctor, nor the acting of a loving daughter she had maintained for years. It was pure satisfaction. Satisfaction for a job well done. You know what? She told us as if we could hear her. You guys really were special. Most families just give me money. You guys gave me something resembling real love. Her words were the most chilling confession I had heard. Ellen had experienced something genuine with us, but she had chosen to destroy it for money anyway. But love does not pay the bills, she continued, and I have big plans for the future. Carol and I knew our time was running out. Once Ellen made those calls, it would be almost impossible to expose the truth. We needed to act, and we needed to do it now. Ellen approached our documents again, but this time with a different method. She was not just photographing papers, she was altering specific information using a pen with ink that matched the original perfectly. She had done this so many times that she had the exact tools necessary to falsify legal documents. From my position on the floor, I could see she was changing dates on our will, adding clauses we had never written, modifying the terms of our insurance policies. She was not just going to inherit our money. She was ensuring she obtained much larger amounts than we had originally stipulated. "Let's see," she murmured while she worked. "The house is valued at $2 million, but with the recent improvements I'm going to recall, they made it should be worth at least $2.5 million. The investments are at $3 million. Life insurance adds up to $4 million. And Dad's pharmaceutical business, that is the real jewel." She stopped at the documents of my pharmaceutical lab, the business I had built for 30 years, and that was now worth approximately $10 million. Ellen was calculating not only our death, but also how to maximize the value of everything at stake. "With the correct modifications here," she said while changing information on the partnership contracts, "I will be able to sell the lab immediately after the funeral. Dad's competitors have been asking about acquisitions for years." Ellen had been studying my business, identifying potential buyers, preparing to liquidate everything we had built for decades. She was not just a killer, she was a financial analyst who had turned inheritance murder into an exact science. My phone rang from the coffee table. Ellen checked it and smiled. "Ah, perfect timing. It is Mr. Morris from Continental Pharmaceuticals, probably calling about the meeting Dad had scheduled for tomorrow." She answered my phone with a voice broken by tears that sounded completely authentic. "Mr. Morris, this is Ellen Sanders. Yes, I am Ernest's daughter. I'm afraid I have terrible news." Her voice broke convincingly. "Dad and Mom, they died this morning. Simultaneous heart attacks. Yes, it was very sudden. Of course I understand they had pending business. No, do not worry. I am going to honor all of Dad's commitments." She was using our death to accelerate commercial negotiations. Ellen had turned our murder into an immediate business opportunity. "In fact, Mr. Morris' dad had mentioned to me that you were interested in acquiring the lab." "Yes, I understand. It is a difficult moment to discuss this, but frankly, I need to liquidate assets as soon as possible. Funeral expenses, inheritance taxes. Would it be possible to meet this week?" Carol squeezed my hand hard. We both understood that Ellen had been preparing this transition for months, possibly years. She had not only planned our murder, she had identified buyers for every asset we owned. She had calculated the best timing for sales. She had developed strategies to maximize her profits. After hanging up, Ellen returned to the documents with renewed energy. She took out a laptop that I recognized as one she had borrowed from my office several months ago, supposedly for a work project. Now I understood she had been using it to investigate our financial situation. "Let's see," she murmured as she opened files she had clearly been preparing for months. "Dad's lawyers contacts the accountants, the real estate agents. Everyone is going to need official notification of the death and transfer of legal authority to me." She had complete lists of all our professional contacts with notes on how to handle each one. Ellen had been studying our business network like a predator studies its prey's territory. "Mr. Vega, the main lawyer, is going to be the hardest," she continued while reviewing her notes. "He is very meticulous. He is going to want to see original death certificates. He is going to insist on waiting periods. But with Dr. Roberts handling the medical documentation, there should be no problems." Ellen had identified every person who could create obstacles for her inheritance and had developed specific strategies to handle them. This was not improvisation. It was the result of years of meticulous planning. Her phone vibrated with a text message. She checked it and smiled. Monica confirms the Harrisons in Cleveland are ready for tomorrow. How efficient my aunt is. Monica was going to murder another family tomorrow. At this moment, there were parents in Cleveland who did not know they had less than 24 hours to live, that their adoptive daughter was preparing poison for their morning coffee, exactly as Ellen had done with us. And the Vances in Houston, Ellen wrote in response. The answer arrived immediately. Installation complete. Maria is already calling them Dad and Mom. We estimate 18 months before completion. 18 months. The Vance family had 18 months to love their new daughter before she murdered them for inheritance. Ellen had reduced family love to a commercial timeline. Carol moved slightly, calling my attention toward the window. A police car had passed slowly down our street as part of a normal patrol round. Ellen had not noticed it, but Carol and I understood we had an opportunity. If we could create enough noise to attract the officer's attention, if we could make him return to investigate, we could expose the entire operation. But we would have to act in a way that Ellen did not have time to destroy evidence or escape. Ellen carefully stored all the modified documents in a briefcase she had brought with her. It was no coincidence. She had come prepared not only to murder us, but to handle all the post-mortem logistics immediately. Well, she told us as if we could hear her, it has been a pleasure being your daughter during all these years. You guys really gave me a beautiful life. It is a shame it has to end, but business is business. She approached us and knelt checking our pulses once more. Her fingers were cold against my neck, calculating completely without emotion. Perfect. Their pulses are practically imperceptible. Dr. Roberts calculated the timing exactly right. Ellen headed toward the kitchen, probably to make the desperate calls to the police and the ambulance. It was our moment. Once the authorities arrived and found the scene she had prepared with Dr. Roberts' death certificates and her performance of a devastated daughter, it would be almost impossible to prove we had been murdered. Carol looked at me with determination. 25 years of marriage told me exactly what she was thinking. It was time to turn the tables. It was time for the dead to rise. The moment Ellen headed toward the kitchen to make the calls that would seal our fate, Carol and I exchanged a look that communicated 25 years of mutual understanding. It was time to act, but we had to do it intelligently. Ellen had proven to be a meticulous and experienced killer, and underestimating her danger could be fatal. Carol moved first, rising silently from the floor with the agility her years of nursing experience had given her. Her movements were precise and silent as she headed toward the main window. We needed a way to communicate with the outside without Ellen noticing. I headed toward my study where I had a phone with a direct line that Ellen did not know about. It was a connection I had installed years ago for lab emergencies, a line that did not appear in any phone book and that Ellen would not have identified during her reconnaissance of our house. From the kitchen I heard Ellen's voice speaking on the phone, her performance of a devastated daughter, so convincing that even knowing the truth, I found it disturbing. Please, I need an ambulance immediately. My parents, I think they are dead. I found their bodies in the living room. Please hurry. Her timing was perfect. The tears in her voice sounded genuine. The panic seemed authentic. Ellen had perfected the art of emotional deception. I quickly dialed the emergency number on my secret line, but instead of reporting a medical emergency, I had something very different to communicate. Operator, I need to be connected with Detective Miller from the Homicide Division. It is urgent. Sir, if you have a medical emergency... It is not a medical emergency. It is a murder case in progress. My name is Ernest Sanders. My address is 847 Maple Street, and there is a killer in my house who thinks she has killed me. The operator fell silent for a moment. Can you repeat that, sir? I am a pharmaceutical chemist, a woman who has posed as my daughter for 25 years, just tried to poison me and my wife with arsenic. We have been pretending to be dead while documenting her criminal operation. I need you to send officers immediately, but they must arrive silently. She is expecting an ambulance and might escape if she realizes we have discovered her. Stay on the line, sir. I am connecting you with Detective Miller right now. Carol returned from the window with signs that she had managed to attract the attention of a neighbor. Mrs. Rodriguez from the house next door, an observant woman who had noticed Carol, seemed to be in danger. Carol had managed to communicate silently that she needed help. Detective Miller speaking. Detective, my name is Ernest Sanders. I need to report a multiple murder in progress and a criminal network of fraudulent adoption and homicide for inheritances. I quickly explained the situation, the poisoning, the death act, Ellen's network with Dr. Roberts and my sister Monica, the multiple cases they had mentioned, the Harrisons in Cleveland, who were scheduled to be murdered tomorrow. Mr. Sanders, those are very serious accusations. Do you have evidence of these claims? Detective, the woman who believes she has murdered me is in my kitchen right now, speaking with an emergency operator, reporting finding our bodies. On her laptop, she has detailed files of multiple families who are targets of this criminal network. On her phone, she has text messages confirming my sister Monica is going to murder a family named Harrison in Cleveland tomorrow. And you are completely sure she tried to poison you. I am a pharmaceutical chemist with 30 years of experience. I recognize the arsenic immediately. I also have the cups she used to serve us the poison. They must still have detectable chemical residues. Understood. I am sending a silent unit immediately. Mr. Sanders, I need you to maintain your act until we arrive. If Ellen suspects you are alive, she could become unpredictable. Understood, Detective. I returned silently to the living room, just as Ellen was finishing her call to emergency services. Carol had already returned to her position on the floor, maintaining the act of being dead. The ambulance should arrive in 10 minutes, Ellen said, speaking to us as if we could hear her. They are going to confirm you are dead, and then I can start with the funeral arrangements. She sat on the sofa and opened her laptop again, but this time she was not reviewing our documents. She was accessing files that clearly contained information about other victims. I could see names of families, photographs of houses, detailed financial evaluations. It was like seeing the catalog of a company that specialized in identifying and eliminating prosperous families without biological children. The Harrisons are going to be complicated, she murmured while reviewing a file. They have more social contacts than you guys. Monica is going to have to be extra careful with the alibi. Ellen opened an encrypted chat program on her laptop. Several contacts immediately appeared online. Monica Dr. Roberts, and several other names I did not recognize. Completed M847, Ellen wrote. Estimating total asset liquidation in 72 hours. Ready for next assignment. The responses arrived immediately. Monica, excellent. H923, scheduled for tomorrow. 0800. E445 in establishment phase. Doctor, Roberts M847 documentation completed. Ready for authorities. User coordinator, new targets identified in Phoenix and Miami, preparing profiles for infiltration. It was a massive operation. Ellen, Monica, and their accomplices were not only operating in multiple cities, but had a code system, a central coordinator, and a constant flow of new victims identified. Carol managed to catch my attention and point discreetly toward the window. Through the curtains, I could see an unmarked police car parking silently on the street. Detective Miller had arrived faster than expected. Ellen continued chatting with her criminal network, completely oblivious that justice was organizing around her. Confirmation of new identities for the next phase, she wrote. Documents ready. Anna Harrison for Phoenix. Sophia Mendoza for Miami. Ages 28 and 31, respectively. Complete medical and educational histories. They had fake identities prepared, fabricated medical documents, invented educational histories. This criminal network was more sophisticated than many terrorist organizations. The sound of a siren approached, the ambulance Ellen had called. It was perfect for her alibi, but it also meant we would have to coordinate carefully with the police to ensure Ellen did not escape in the confusion. Ellen closed her laptop quickly and headed toward the front door, preparing to receive the paramedics with her devastated daughter act. "Perfect timing," she murmured. "Everything is going exactly as I planned." But what Ellen did not know was that Carol and I had spent the last 30 minutes mentally documenting every detail of her criminal operation, that the police were positioning themselves to surround the house, and that her dead victims were completely alive and ready to testify against her. Ellen thought she had executed the perfect crime. She was about to discover she had made the most costly mistake of her criminal career. The paramedics entered the house with Ellen guiding them toward us. Her performance of a devastated daughter was so convincing that even the medical professionals seemed genuinely moved by her pain. But what Ellen did not know was that Detective Miller had coordinated with emergency services, and one of the paramedics was actually an undercover officer. "I found them like this 20 minutes ago." Ellen sobbed while the paramedics knelt beside us. "I came for our usual Sunday breakfast, but when I arrived, they were no longer responding." The real paramedic, a man named Garcia, according to his badge, checked our pulses with genuine professionalism. His eyebrows raised slightly when he felt our hearts were beating normally, but he maintained a neutral expression. "Miss Garcia said, 'We are going to need to examine your parents in private to determine exactly what happened. Could you wait for us in the kitchen?' "Of course," replied Ellen. "Do everything you can for them." As soon as Ellen walked away, Garcia leaned toward us and whispered, "Are you conscious Detective Miller instructed us you might be faking for safety?" I opened my eyes slightly and nodded almost imperceptibly. "Arsenic in the coffee," I murmured as low as I could. "We have evidence." Garcia turned toward his partner, the undercover officer, and gave him a discreet signal. The plan was working perfectly. From the kitchen, Ellen had begun making phone calls, probably notifying her network that the mission had been successful. But what she did not know was that every word she said was being recorded by devices Miller's team had quickly installed. "Monica, it is me," I heard her say. "It is done. The paramedics are confirming now. Yes, exactly as we planned. No, there were no complications. We can proceed with the Harrisons tomorrow as scheduled." It was a complete confession recorded. Ellen had just admitted not only our attempted murder, but also confirmed that the Harrisons were scheduled to be murdered the next day. Detective Miller appeared silently at the back door, accompanied by several officers. Carol and I sat up slowly, keeping our movements to a minimum to avoid making noise. "Are you hurt?" whispered Miller. "We took very little poison," I replied quietly. I recognized the arsenic immediately, and we pretended to drink more than we actually consumed. "Do you have the cups?" Carol pointed toward the kitchen. "She washed them, but probably not well enough. There should be detectable residues." Miller assigned officers to secure the physical evidence, while he concentrated on coordinating the arrest. "Mr. Sanders, we need you to continue pretending to be dead until we have completely surrounded the house. If Ellen suspects anything, she could activate emergency protocols with her network." He was right. If Ellen realized she had been discovered, she could warn Monica and Dr. Roberts, allowing them to escape. We needed to capture the entire network simultaneously. "Have you identified all potential victims?" asked Carol. "Based on the information you provided, we have alerted authorities in Cleveland, Houston, Phoenix, and Miami. The Harrisons are being moved to safety right now." A small satisfaction filled me, knowing that at least we had saved the Harrisons, but there were still multiple families in danger, and Ellen had information on all of them. Ellen returned from the kitchen just as Garcia, the paramedic, prepared to give his official diagnosis. "Miss Sanders," Garcia said with a somber tone, "I'm afraid your parents have suffered massive simultaneous cardiac arrests. It is very unusual, but it can happen in couples who have been married a long time." "Is there nothing you can do?" asked Ellen, her acting still perfect. "I'm afraid we arrived too late. You will need to contact a funeral home." Ellen nodded solemnly. "Do you need me to sign anything?" "Some basic forms. But first, we're going to need medical information about your parents. Did they have any pre-existing heart conditions? It was a question designed for Ellen to build more lies that could be used against her in court. Dad had been having blood pressure problems. Ellen lied without hesitation, and Mom had been very stressed lately about family finances. More documented lies. Ellen was building a complete false narrative to explain our deaths without knowing every word was being recorded. And you are the sole heir. Yes, I am an only child. My parents never had other children. The irony of that statement hit me like a hammer. Ellen was technically correct. Carol and I never had other children after our real Ellen died, but she was not our daughter, and that lie had been the foundation of 25 years of deception. Detective Miller appeared at the front door showing his badge. Miss Sanders, I am Detective Miller from Homicide. We routinely investigate all sudden deaths. Could we speak? Ellen seemed slightly nervous for the first time, but maintained her composure. Of course, Detective. I will do everything I can to help. Could you tell me exactly what happened this morning? Ellen repeated her prepared story. Arrival for Sunday breakfast. Finding our bodies. Calling emergency immediately. Every detail had been rehearsed. Every emotion carefully modulated. And you live here with your parents? No, I have my own apartment, but I come every Sunday for breakfast. It is a family tradition we have maintained for years. Do you notice anything unusual in the house? Anything out of place? Ellen looked around theatrically. Everything seems normal. Mom always kept the house perfectly tidy. And the coffee they are drinking this morning. For the first time, Ellen hesitated, almost imperceptibly. The coffee, I see cups on the coffee table. Did they drink coffee together? Yes, yes, I brought them special coffee from that French bakery they liked. I thought it would be a nice gift. From which bakery exactly? Ellen had no answer for that because she had never bought coffee. She had prepared the poison at home and served it in regular cups. La Petite France, I think it is called. Miller nodded as if taking routine notes. And did you also drink from that coffee? No, I do not drink caffeine. Stomach problems? Every question was revealing inconsistencies in Ellen's story. Miller was methodically building a case against her using her own lies. Miss Sanders, we are going to need you to come to the station for a formal statement. It is standard procedure in cases of sudden death. Of course, replied Ellen. Can I arrange some things here first? I'm afraid the house is going to need to be processed as a crime scene until we complete our investigation. Ellen tensed visibly. Crime scene? But you said they were heart attacks. It is standard procedure for all unexplained deaths. Miller lied smoothly. Ellen knew her laptop contained incriminating evidence of her entire criminal network. If the police processed the house, they would find everything the victim files. The communications with her network, the forged documents. Detective, said Ellen, trying to keep calm, would it be possible to wait until tomorrow? This has been such a traumatic day. I'm afraid we cannot wait. Evidence needs to be preserved immediately. Ellen looked toward her laptop on the table, then toward the door, calculating her options. Carol and I could see the wheels turning in her mind, evaluating if she could escape or if she should try to destroy the evidence. What Ellen did not know was that the house was already completely surrounded, every escape blocked, and her dead victims were waiting for the perfect moment to rise and confront her with the truth. The moment of truth had arrived. Detective Miller gave me a discreet signal, and slowly Carol and I began to sit up from the floor. Ellen had her back turned, looking nervously toward her laptop, unaware that her dead victims were returning to life. You know what is the most ironic thing about all this? Ellen, I said in a clear, strong voice. Ellen spun around, her face transforming from anxiety to absolute shock upon seeing me standing completely alive. Carol stood up beside me, and for the first time in 25 years, I saw genuine terror in Ellen's eyes. How? You guys were dead. I checked your pulses, she stammered, backing toward the wall. The irony, I continued approaching her, is that you have been living in the house of a pharmaceutical chemist for 25 years, and it never occurred to you that I might recognize arsenic in my coffee. Carol joined the confrontation, her voice trembling with rage contained for decades. Where is our real daughter, Ellen? What happened to our real Ellen? The officers who had been waiting outside entered quickly surrounding Ellen before she could try to escape, but she seemed too shocked to move. You cannot be alive, she whispered. I calculated the dose perfectly. 30 milligrams of arsenic for each of you. That should have been enough. To kill us, yes, but we did not drink enough, I replied. We pretended to drink while you were not looking. We poured most of it into the plants. Ellen looked toward Carol's indoor plants, which were indeed beginning to show signs of arsenic poisoning. It was additional evidence of her crime. Detective Miller, I said, Ellen just confessed to calculating 30 milligrams of arsenic for each of us. That is a direct admission of attempted homicide. Miller approached Ellen with handcuffs in hand. Ellen Sanders, you are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, and identity fraud. I am not Ellen Sanders, she shouted suddenly, her mask finally falling completely. I do not even know who the real Ellen Sanders was. Carol and I exchanged looks. Finally, we were going to get answers about what had happened to our real daughter. What is your real name? Asked Miller while handcuffing her. Mallory Grace. I was 32 years old, and I have been doing this for 15 years. 32 years old. Ellen had been 7 years old when she arrived at our house, not 3, as we had believed. The age difference meant there had been an even more elaborate manipulation than we had imagined. And how did you come to our family? Asked Carol, her voice broken by years of suppressed pain. Mallory, the woman we had known as Ellen, looked at us with a mix of defiance and resignation. Monica Sanders recruited me from the orphanage system when I was 7. She trained me for months. She taught me details about your family, about the house, about routines. She told me that if I could maintain the act for at least 10 years, she would give me a part of the inheritance. What happened to our real Ellen? Asked Carol, tears running down her face. I do not know, replied Mallory coldly. Monica never told me. She only told me there was an opportunity available, and that I had the right look to take advantage of it. Carol staggered. She had been right. Our Ellen had died in that surgery, but now we understood that Monica had seen that tragedy as a business opportunity. Detective, I said, my sister Monica orchestrated all of this. She recruited this girl, trained her to replace our dead daughter, and has probably been planning our murder ever since. Miller nodded. We already have teams on the way to arrest Monica Sanders and Dr. Roberts. Their communications with Mallory have been intercepted for the last 2 hours. How many families have you killed? Asked Carol. Mallory looked at her with something that might have been remorse. You guys would have been the 6th family. Monica handles other similar operations with different recruits. In total, probably about 20 families over the last 10 years. 20 families. 40 parents who had died believing they loved their adopted daughter, without knowing they had been murdered by her. Why did you wait so long with us? Asked Carol. At first it was just work, but you really treated me like family. You gave me something I had never had. Genuine love. Her voice cracked slightly. I kept postponing the completion because I did not want it to end. But finally, you decided money was more important than love, I said, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. Monica began to pressure me. She said I was getting too emotional, that I was losing focus. I have debts with very dangerous people. I needed the money. Detective Miller intervened. Mallory, if you cooperate completely with our investigation, if you help us locate and identify all the victims, we could consider reducing some of the charges. What do you want to know? Everything, the real names of all victims, locations of all active operations, names of all accomplices, methods used, everything. Mallory looked toward her laptop. Everything is there. Files on every family communications with the network. plans for future operations. Monica is very organized with documentation. Miller assigned technicians to process the laptop immediately. In a few hours, they would have enough evidence to completely dismantle the criminal network and identify all the victims. "Are there other families in immediate danger besides the Harrisons?" asked Miller. "The Vances in Houston. The infiltration was 2 months ago. Maria is scheduled to accelerate the process because they discovered some inconsistencies in her story." Miller immediately radioed instructions to protect the Vances. Carol approached Mallory, looking her directly in the eyes. "For 25 years, I loved you like my own daughter. I gave you everything I had to give. Did you ever feel anything real for us, or was it all acting?" Mallory lowered her gaze. "At first it was acting. But yes, after a few years I began to feel something real. You were the only parents I really had. That is why it was so difficult to do this." "But you did it anyway," I said. "I did it anyway." Carol turned around, unable to look any longer at the woman who had been both our emotional salvation and our planned destruction. "Detective Miller," I said, "could we have a few minutes alone to process all this?" "Of course. Mallory comes with us now. You will need to testify formally, but you can do it tomorrow." As they took Mallory away, she turned once more toward us. "For what it is worth," she said. "You were the best family I had. I am sorry it had to end like this." And then she was gone, taking with her 25 years of lies, fake love, and the truth about what had happened to our real daughter. Carol and I remained in our living room, surrounded by evidence of our not nearly destroyed life, finally understanding the magnitude of the betrayal we had faced, but also understanding that we had survived, that we had exposed a massive criminal network, and that finally we had answers about the fate of our real Ellen. It was a bittersweet ending to a nightmare that had lasted more than 2 decades. The following days were a whirlwind of police statements, interviews with prosecutors, and the gradual revelation of the full magnitude of the criminal network we had helped expose. Carol and I became key witnesses in what the media began to call the most sophisticated family murder network in history. Detective Miller visited us regularly with updates on the investigation. Mallory's laptop had revealed an operation that extended to 8 different states with more than 30 confirmed victims over the last decade. Her sister Monica was the main coordinator. Miller explained to us during one of his visits. She handled the recruitment of orphans, training and acting and infiltration selection of target families, and coordination of murders. Carol shuddered. "How could we not realize my sister-in-law was a serial killer?" Monica was very careful keeping her identities separate. "For you, she was the dedicated sister who helped during a family crisis. For the criminal network, she was the coordinator, one of the most successful inheritance killers in the country." "Have you arrested everyone involved?" I asked. "We are making progress. Monica was arrested in Cleveland right before poisoning the Harrisons. Dr. Roberts was captured trying to cross the border. We have identified 12 other accomplices in different states." But Miller had a proposal that surprised us. "Mr. and Mrs. Sanders, we need your help for a special operation." "What kind of operation?" I asked. Mallory mentioned there are at least 5 active operations where families are living with infiltrated killers who still do not know the network has been exposed. We want to use Mallory's information to create a coordinated rescue operation. Carol leaned forward, interested. "How could we help?" "Mallory has agreed to cooperate completely in exchange for a sentence reduction. But we need you to confront her in a recorded session where she admits specific details about every active operation. Her testimony as surviving victims would be crucial to convince the other families they are in danger." The idea of seeing Mallory again was painful, but we also understood we could save lives. "Where is she now?" asked Carol. "In a special security cell. She has been providing information constantly, but we need specific details she would only reveal under emotional pressure." "Emotional pressure?" "Mrs. Sanders, you were the only family Mallory genuinely loved during her criminal career. Her reaction to you is completely different. from how she responds to official interrogators. We believe confronting her with the damage she caused you could motivate her to reveal information she is withholding. Carol and I looked at each other. It was an opportunity to obtain full justice for all the victims of this network, but it required reliving our personal trauma. What kind of information is she withholding? I asked. Locations of buried victims whose murders were covered up as accidents, real identities of other infiltrators who are using fake names, and most importantly, the location of a master file containing evidence of operations dating back 15 years. 15 years of murders, dozens of families who had never received justice because their deaths had been perfectly covered up. We will do whatever is necessary, said Carol with determination. 2 days later, Carol and I sat across from Mallory in an interrogation room at the state prison. She had lost weight, her hair was disheveled, and for the first time since we knew her, she looked vulnerable and insecure. "Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom," she said softly when we entered. "We are not your parents," replied Carol firmly. "We never were. You were a stranger living in our house planning to murder us." Mallory lowered her gaze. "I know. But for 25 years, you guys were the closest thing to real parents I had." "And how did you repay us for that, love?" I asked, trying to kill us with poison. "Ernest Carroll, I know you have no reason to believe me, but you need to understand something. You changed who I was. When I arrived at your house, I was just a girl trained to lie and steal, but you taught me what it meant to be loved." "If you really loved us," said Carol, "you would have told us the truth. You would have given us the chance to help you escape this criminal life." "Would you have? Would you really have helped me if you knew I was a killer?" The question hit us hard because we were not sure of the answer. Detective Miller intervened from his position behind the one-way glass. "Mallory, there are families who are going to die if we do not get the information we need. The Santos family in Guadalajara, the Mendozas, the Riveras, they all have infiltrators waiting for orders to execute." "The orders are never going to arrive," replied Mallory. "With Monica arrested, the network is deactivated." "But do you know those infiltrators could panic and act independently?" Mallory tensed. She had not considered that possibility. "Mallory," said Carol, leaning forward, "if you ever felt real love for us, prove it now. Help us save those families." "What do you need to know exactly?" Miller entered the room with a thick file. "We need the real names of all active infiltrators. We need the locations of buried victims. And we need to know where Monica hid the master file." Mallory looked directly at us. "If I cooperate completely, if I give you all the information, would you testify in my favor during sentencing?" "It depends on the information," I replied. "And if I told you that our real Ellen did not die in that surgery?" The world stopped. Carol and I looked at her in absolute shock. "What do you mean?" whispered Carol. "Monica kidnapped her from the hospital. Ellen is alive, but she has been raised by another family who does not know she was kidnapped." Carol began to cry. Our daughter was alive. After 25 years of mourning, we were discovering that Ellen had been alive this whole time. "Where is she?" asked Carol desperately. "That information," said Mallory, "I exchanged for favorable testimony and a significant sentence reduction." It was the last ace she had to play, and Mallory had saved it for the most shocking moment possible. Carol and I looked at each other, understanding we were in an impossible position. Mallory had kept the secret about our living daughter as a final bargaining chip. But we also understood that if we wanted to get our real Ellen back and save the families who were still in danger, we would have to make a deal with the woman who had betrayed our love for 25 years. The revelation that our real Ellen was alive changed the entire dynamic of the situation. Carol clung to my hand so tight I thought she would break my fingers. Tears running down her face as she processed the possibility that our daughter, whom we had mourned for 25 years, might actually be alive. "Mallory," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "if Ellen is alive, we need proof. We are not going to make deals based on empty promises." Mallory smiled slightly, the first genuine smile we had seen since her arrest. Monica documented everything meticulously. There are photographs of Ellen growing up with the Reed family in Oregon. Her name is Andrea Reed now. She is 28 years old. She is married, has 2 small children, and works as an elementary school teacher. Carol sobbed audibly. You have been seeing photographs of our daughter for years and never told us. Monica's orders were specific. Never reveal information about kidnapped siblings unless it was absolutely necessary for the survival of the operation. Kidnapped siblings? Asked Detective Miller, taking notes quickly. Plural. Monica's operation was not just about fraudulent adoption followed by inheritance murder. It also included kidnapping children from wealthy families to create inventories of replacements when necessary. The horror of what we were discovering intensified with every revelation. Monica had not only orchestrated mass murders, but had been kidnapping children systematically. How many children did she kidnap? Asked Miller. Over the last 15 years, approximately 40 children. Most were placed with families who believed they were adopting legitimate orphans. Some, like Ellen, were used as reserves in case specific operations required replacements. Carol stood up abruptly. I need air. This is too much. She left the room and I followed her. In the hallway, Carol leaned against the wall, hyperventilating. Ernest, our baby has been alive this whole time. She has a family, children. A complete life she built without us. Carol, we are going to find her. We are going to meet our grandkids. There will be time to recover the relationship. But what if she does not want to meet us? What if the Reeds are better parents than we were? What if disrupting her life causes her more harm than good? They were valid questions that had no answer, but we knew we needed to try to reunite with Ellen, no matter how complicated it was. We returned to the room where Mallory waited patiently. Are you willing to cooperate completely? Asked Miller. Yes, but I want written guarantees about the sentence reduction. First the information, then the negotiations. Mallory sighed and began to speak. Over the next 4 hours, she provided exhaustive details about the entire operation, real names of infiltrators, locations of buried victims, murder methods used current target families, and the location of Monica's master file. The file is in a safety deposit box at National Bank under the name Ellen Vance, another of Monica's fake identities, she revealed. It contains complete documentation of all crimes, including falsified death certificates, modified wills, financial records of all stolen inheritances, and the locations of the kidnapped children. There is a complete list in the file. Monica kept detailed records because some children would eventually be used for future operations when they were older. It was enough information to completely dismantle the network and potentially reunite dozens of kidnapped children with their biological families. Mallory said, Carol, why did you decide to cooperate now? Is it really just for the sentence reduction? Mallory looked directly at her. Carol, for 25 years you gave me something I had never had: unconditional love. Even knowing what I am, even after I tried to kill you, you are here trying to save other families? That does not answer my question. I'm cooperating because I finally understand what it really means to love someone. You taught me that. And if real love means sacrificing for the well-being of others, then I want to do the right thing for the first time in my life. Even if it means spending decades in prison. Even if it means never getting out of prison. Carol remained silent for a long moment, studying Mallory's face. You know what is the most tragic thing about this entire situation? Carol said finally. What? If you had come to us years ago and told us the truth about who you were, about Ellen, about Monica, we would have helped you. We would have protected you. We would have given you a real life outside this criminal network. Mallory began to cry. I know. I have known it for years, but I was too scared, too used to lying, and Monica always reminded me that you would reject me if you knew the truth. Monica was wrong, I said. Real love is not conditional. I know now, but it is too late for me. Detective Miller interrupted the emotional moment. Mr. and Mrs. Sanders, with the information Mallory has provided, we can begin rescue operations immediately. Are you ready to help us contact your real daughter? Carol and I looked at each other. After 25 years, we were finally going to reunite with Ellen, but we were also going to have to explain to her that her entire life had been built on a lie, that she had been kidnapped, that she had biological parents who had never stopped loving her. We are ready, said Carol. One more thing, said Mallory when we prepared to leave. Ellen, the real Ellen, she has a birthmark shaped like a butterfly on her right shoulder. When you see her, you will know immediately she is your daughter. Carol sobbed again. Ellen had had that birthmark. It was the final confirmation that our daughter was truly alive. Thank you, I told Mallory, for everything. Do not thank me yet, she replied. Wait until you have recovered your daughter and saved all those families. Then you can decide if I deserve gratitude or not. As we left the prison, Carol and I understood that we were about to embark on the hardest part of this journey, reuniting with a daughter who did not remember us saving families, who did not know they were in danger and trying to heal wounds that had been open for 25 years. But for the first time since we discovered the poison in our coffee, we felt genuine hope. 6 months after the confrontation that changed our lives forever, Carol and I are sitting in the garden of our house, watching our 5-year-old granddaughter, Sophia, playing with the flowers Carol has planted, especially for her. Across the garden, our daughter Ellen, who we now know as Andrea Reed Sanders, gently pushes our 3-year-old grandson, Diego, on the swing I installed last week. The reunion had been more complex than we had imagined. Ellen had initially refused to meet us, understandably confused and scared by the revelation that she had been kidnapped as a baby. The Reeds, who had raised her with genuine love without knowing she had been kidnapped, had been extraordinarily understanding and had gradually facilitated our reconnection. I do not want to replace my parents, Ellen had told us during our first tense meeting. They gave me a beautiful life. They loved me. They educated me. I am not going to abandon them for biological parents I do not remember. We do not want you to replace them, Carol had responded, crying. We only want to know you, to meet our grandkids, to be part of your life in whatever capacity makes you comfortable. Gradually, during weekly visits that became regular family dinners, Ellen had begun to develop a relationship with us. We were not dad and mom to her. Those titles belonged to the Reeds. But we were Ernest and Carol, the biological grandparents. Her children adored the extension of family that had enriched her life rather than complicating it. The legal process had been equally satisfying. Mallory, faithful to her word, had provided complete testimony that resulted in the total dismantling of Monica's criminal network. 43 families had received justice for murders that had been covered up as natural deaths. 38 kidnapped children had been reunited with their biological families, or in cases where that was not possible, had been informed about their true origins. Monica had been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Dr. Roberts had received 30 years. The other accomplices had received sentences varying between 15 and 25 years. Mallory, due to her complete cooperation and her testimony that had saved multiple lives, had received a reduced sentence of 25 years with the possibility of parole after 15. Carol and I had testified in her favor, acknowledging that although she had tried to murder us, she had also provided us with 25 years of a relationship that, although based on lies, had contained moments of genuine love. You know what is the strangest thing about all this? Carol asked me while we watch our grandkids play. What? Mallory once told us that we were the family that loved her the most, but she was also, in a certain sense, the daughter who loved us the most. Even with all the lies, even with the final betrayal, there was real love there. Do you forgive her? Carol considers the question carefully. I do not forgive what she tried to do to us. But I understand she was a traumatized child who was trained to be a killer. And in the end, when it mattered, she chose to do the right thing. Ellen approaches us, carrying Diego, who had gotten tired of playing. "What are you guys talking about?" she asks, settling into a chair beside us. "About justice," I reply, "about how sometimes the perfect revenge is not destroying someone but saving them." "You mean Mallory?" Carol nods. "We could have testified for her to get life in prison. We could have sought the death penalty, but in the end, helping her find redemption felt like the right answer." Ellen, who had struggled with her own feelings about Mallory, nods thoughtfully. "It is strange to think that if she had not tried to poison you, you would have never found me. Life has mysterious ways of correcting past mistakes." "It does," I say, looking at my grandkids who are now chasing butterflies among Carol's flowers. My phone rings. It is Detective Miller, who has become a friend during these months. "Ernest, I have interesting news. Mallory has started a program in prison to help other inmates who were victims of human trafficking during their childhood. She is using her experience to help rehabilitate people who, like her, were forced into a criminal life. That is unexpected. There is more. She has established contact with several of her previous victims' families, asking for forgiveness and providing information that has helped them with emotional closure. Not everyone has forgiven her, but many have expressed that her letters have been useful for their grieving process." After hanging up, I tell Carol and Ellen about the conversation. "Do you think she has really changed?" asks Ellen. "I think she finally understood what you taught her about real love," says Carol. "And she is trying to live according to those lessons, even from prison." Sophia runs toward us with a butterfly she has managed to catch gently in her small hands. "Grandma Carol, look, it is like Mom's mark." Ellen smiles and rolls up her sleeve to show the butterfly-shaped birthmark that had been our first confirmation she was truly our daughter. "That is right, my love. Butterflies are special in our family." "Why?" "Because butterflies remind us that people can transform completely," I reply, taking Sophia in my arms. "Sometimes something that starts as an ugly thing can become something beautiful." Carol looks at me with understanding. We both understand I am speaking not only about butterflies, but about our complete experience. The most horrible betrayal had led to the most beautiful reunification. The attempted murder had resulted in justice for dozens of families. The most devastating lie had revealed the most precious truth. As the sun sets over our garden, with our grandkids playing, our recovered daughter, laughing with Carol, and the knowledge that multiple families are safe because of our actions, I understand we have achieved the most perfect revenge possible. We did not destroy our enemies. We transformed them. We did not seek justice only for us, but for all victims. We did not allow betrayal to embitter us, but used it as a catalyst to create something better. Mallory had tried to poison our coffee and steal our lives. Instead, she had inadvertently catalyzed the reunion with our lost daughter, the exposure of a massive criminal network, and the salvation of multiple innocent families. That night, as Carol and I prepared to sleep in the house we had almost lost forever, we reflected on how the cruelest attempted murder had resulted in the most unexpected blessings of our lives. "You know what I find most incredible of all?" says Carol as she brushes her hair in front of the vanity mirror. "What?" "That Mallory once told us we had been her favorite family because we really loved her, but now I realize she also saved us from a life of unnecessary mourning. Without her betrayal, we would have never discovered Ellen was alive." It is a perspective that had been haunting me for months. Was it possible that Mallory had unconsciously given us the greatest gift of our lives by trying to kill us? Carol, do you think some part of her knew her plan would fail, that she wanted to be discovered? I do not know, but I think after 25 years of receiving genuine love, some part of her wanted to make it right, even if she did not know how to do it directly. My phone vibrates with a text message. It is from Ellen. "Thanks for the wonderful afternoon. The kids won't stop talking about Grandpa Ernest and Grandma Carol. See you Sunday for the family meal. P.S. Sophia wants you to teach her more about butterflies. Carol reads the message over my shoulder and smiles. Who would have thought our happiest family Sundays would arrive after 57 years? And who would have thought the most bitter coffee of our lives would lead us to the greatest sweetness? We receive an unexpected call. It is the prison warden. Mr. Sanders, sorry to bother you so late. Mallory Grace has requested to see you. She says she has something important to tell you, something she could not say during the official interrogations. Carol and I exchanged glances. 6 months had passed since the last time we saw Mallory. Do you have any idea what it is about? I ask. Not specifically, but she has been behaving very differently lately, more reflective, more genuinely remorseful. Her counselors believe she has had some kind of emotional breakthrough. When could we see her? Whenever you want. She is available for special visits, due to her continuous cooperation with the investigations. Carol nods. We will go tomorrow. The next day, Carol and I sit across from Mallory in the same room where she had revealed Ellen was alive. But this time she looked completely different. She had lost the calculating air she had always had. Her eyes were clearer, more honest. Thank you for coming, she says softly. I know you had no obligation to do so. What did you want to tell us? Asked Carol directly. Mallory takes a deep breath. I wanted to confess something I never told even the police. Something about why I really decided to try to poison you. We are listening. The reason was not just the money or Monica's pressure. It was because I was falling in love with you guys too deeply. And I knew eventually I would have to tell you the truth about who I really was. I was terrified of seeing the disappointment in your eyes when you discovered your daughter was an imposter and a killer. Carol leans forward. So you tried to kill us to avoid having to confess to us. I know it sounds completely irrational, but yes, I preferred you die loving me than live hating me. It is a twisted logic, but strangely understandable, coming from someone who had been trained since childhood to believe love was always conditional. Mallory, I say, there is something you need to understand. If you had come to us with the truth even a year ago, even a month ago, we would have helped you escape this life. Real love does not disappear when you discover someone is imperfect. Her eyes fill with tears. I know that now. I have been learning about unconditional love in the therapy groups here, but back then I could not conceive it. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Asks Carol. Yes. I want you to know that every moment of love we shared during those 25 years was genuine on my part. It was not acting. You taught me what it meant to be part of a real family, and those lessons are helping me help other prisoners here. What kind of help? I'm working with women who were trafficked as children like me. I am teaching them that real love exists, that redemption is possible, that they can choose to be different from what they were forced to be. Carol remains silent for a long moment, studying Mallory's face. You know what? Says Carol finally. I think you have finally become the daughter we always wanted you to be. Mallory begins to weep completely. Do you really believe that? Yes, I reply. A daughter who uses her pain to help others, who finds purpose in service, who chooses love over fear. That is the daughter we dreamed of having. Do you forgive me? Carol and I look at each other. After months of processing, of healing, of rebuilding our lives, we finally understand that forgiveness is not just for Mallory. It is for us. We forgive you, says Carol, and more importantly, we hope you can forgive yourself. As we leave the prison that afternoon, Carol and I understand we have completed a circle. We started as victims of a horrible betrayal, but we have ended as catalysts for redemption and transformation. The perfect revenge was not destroying Mallory. It was loving her enough to inspire her transformation, even from prison. That night, while Carol and I fall asleep in our bed in the house, we almost lost, surrounded by photographs of our grandkids and plans for Sunday's family reunion, we understand we have achieved something extraordinary. We turned poison into medicine. We transformed betrayal into reunification. We changed a story of death into a narrative of new life. And it all started with a cup of coffee that tasted bitter, but turned out to be the sweetest gift we had ever received.